Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Jordan Ryan with Fire and Forget podcast. Today, my guest is Mandy Thurber. It's episode 3. Mandy is originally from Utah. She's a Marine Corps veteran, and she now lives in Florida. You want to introduce yourself, Mandy?
Absolutely. Hey guys, I'm Mandy Thurber.
Alrighty. So let's get into it. As we discussed before the podcast, this is the whole breakout of your life. It's capturing your lineage, your time in service, transitioning to your career fields after service, and the decisions you made throughout your life period. So we're going to go all the way back to the start. So, Mandy, where are you originally from?
Starting from the beginning, born and raised in Utah.
Okay. Small town, big town?
I mean, it depends because I kind of was all over the place. So originally American Fork, which was small 29 years ago, not as small anymore. Utah County's kind of, but I would say Utah County, place of home.
So you weren't raised Mormon or anything crazy, right?
No, I absolutely was actually.
Really?
Born and raised, my whole family.
That's fun. All right. So, let's talk about your family. So, just discuss how kind of the breakout is, siblings, family.
Absolutely. So, mom and dad, obviously, and then there's 4 of us. So, I have 3 other siblings. My older sister, Melissa, who's 10 years older than me. My sister, Natalie, who's 7 years older than me. And then my brother. And I'm the baby.
What did your mom and dad do when you were growing up?
So, my dad, he is machinist. He's a... he's been doing that for over 30 years. Loves it still. Even though he's a boss, he still works Saturdays, even though he doesn't have to. My mom, she was focused mostly on being a mom, but she worked at the hospital part time just to get extra money to do fun activities after work, after school. So.
What kind of work was that? CNA work?
No, actually, she did billing, so she just did a lot of paperwork.
So what did you do while you were growing up? Like, what were your hobbies? What sports were you in? Clubs? All that kind of stuff?
So I would like to say I was a little bit of everything. So my family, as like a unit, we would go up to our family cabin. So we have a cabin up in Heber, Utah. Incredible. It doesn't have any running plumbing or any electricity, so it's old school. So when we went up there, like, we were camping. We would take the snowmobiles up there, the dirt bikes, the 4-wheelers. Me and my dad, we really got into hunting together. My other siblings weren't really interested as much as I was. So that's something that we kind of did together. Growing up through school, sports, I did volleyball, soccer, softball, but more like just county leagues rather than really dedicated to any one sport. But I did kind of a little bit of everything.
Okay. So, I guess we'll get into your recruiting process.
Absolutely, let's go.
All right, so when did you get recruited?
So I was 20. I graduated in 2011. And I went straight to college because that's what you're supposed to do. That's what they teach you. Realized that that's mighty. And I was working full time, going to school full time, flunking out. So I was like, I got to do something different. But I have to make money because I was struggling to make money at the time and trying to figure out what path I wanted to go on. And then there was the Marine Corps. I went in actually originally for the Navy. And I wasn't doing too hot on my ASVAB. So I was going through the Navy doing my ASVAB stuff, and they were training with me, tutoring me, trying to get me up on smart pars. And I ran into the Marine Corps recruiter who spooked me up. He saw me coming a mile away, and he got me with you want to be with the best branch, don't you? So that's where it started. I signed on with the Marine Corps, and within a month I was at boot camp.
So, my first episode with Vinny, he was recruited, and he talked about this process too. Mm-hmm. Marine Corps recruiting's, they'll get you.
Oh,
don't let them. If you're going in there looking at another branch, they're gonna get you if you stop by the Marine Corps office. They might get you without you stopping by the office. Mm-hmm. Keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm. All right. Prime example.
Prime example, Mandy. Mm-hmm. All right, so Marine Corps recruiter gets you. And then you're at boot camp. So what discipline did you want to come in as?
So my recruiter is a smart man. Smart man. So he told me, and I'm a fool for believing it. You hear all the recruiter stories that they're going to get you no matter what. Well, that was no exception. I was like, I want to take pictures. Like, I want to do that, or I want to be in the armory. Like, I want to do something cool. Like, I'm not just going to, leave home to go not do something not cool. He's like, I'm going to assign you in the logistics group, and then when you get there, you just tell them what job you want, and they'll give it to you. So obviously I know that sounds ridiculous, and I should have done my research, But again, I was 20. I was dumb. I was born and raised in Utah, which means you're a little bit naive, people being dishonest. So I got played like a fiddle, and so I was in the logistics group. They put me as an 0411, so a maintenance manager.
All right. So you come up. You want to talk about your boot camp, MCT, your schoolhouse experiences from what you recollect, anyways?
Absolutely. So boot camp was a trip. I really actually excelled in boot camp. I was nominated as the Molly Marine, which is, I don't know that boys, but it's basically all the recruits vote for whoever is like the most like kind, leadership, all the things that they want to be led by. And so I was nominated as a Molly Marine, which was cool. Like, made me feel really good that my peers saw me that way. I also was the series command. Series guide, thank you. I was like, shoot. So I was a series guide, which was also cool, which meritoriously promoted me to PFC. Yeah.
Oh, you were private coming in?
Yeah, private coming in. PFC got promoted meritoriously, which was also cool. So I actually, as hard as it was, I thrived in it. I really liked it. Don't get me wrong, difficult, but you kind of plan for that going into Marine Corps boot camp. Like, you hear all the stories and you're like, okay, this is rough.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It was rough, but I think I kind of thrived in that rough environment.
Yeah, that checks out completely.
Mm-hmm.
So, MCT, do you remember anything about that?
Oh boy, do I. So MCT was cool. So when I was in boot camp, I started struggling with my hips. I didn't know what it was, but I also knew that I wasn't getting held back, so I didn't really say much about it. But I could feel that something was off in my hips. But push through that. Same with MCT, because you go with the same group of people from boot camp to MCT. So, obviously, So I wanted to stay with my group, with my people, right? People that I've been with for months. So I kept pushing through that through MCT. So our last big hike, I fractured my hip, and which was interesting. Well, I think my hip was fractured the entire time, but the thing that kind of pushed me over the edge on our last hike was then I fractured my opposite foot's metatarsal, or toe, like fractured my toe basically, and that kind of did me in because I was compensating for so long, walking differently, putting more pressure on different things. So stress fractures are a real bitch. Like, they'll get you, especially when you're working your body more than you've ever worked it in your life. It shines right through.
Yeah. So people don't understand and never been through Marine Corps training, and then also through boot camp and stuff like that. Boot camp, they do a pretty good job. They don't make you calorie deficient and stuff like that. They train the heck out of you, of course. MCT is in the same thing, but you get a lot of sleep because they're trying to put you under stress attached to your combatives. So fun fact, Mandy and I went to the schoolhouse and MCT together.
That's right.
So, yeah, looking back a little bit. So we'll actually transition into your schoolhouse experience.
So schoolhouse, it's cool because you start getting a little bit more freedom, which obviously is desirable. I've just been babysat, you feel like, for the last 3-4 months. I realized that my job that I got was not really anything that I wanted to do. So I was a little bit disappointed, but I pushed through it, and fortunately, I got stationed in Camp Lejeune. I was hoping I was going to go to Okinawa, or California, or anywhere else, North Carolina, because that's where I had been training. But North Carolina ended up being a big blessing. I really, really enjoyed being there.
Okay, so we're going to talk about your fleet experience.
Okay.
Talk about your commands that you were underneath, any of your travels, all this good stuff. So we'll go ahead and start when you got to the fleet.
So fleet was an interesting endeavor. Being an 0411, you get positioned in different areas. I was with CLR 27 originally, which has been announced, but I went from one office to the next, just trying to figure out where they needed me, because 0411s you only get one per regiment, and depending on obviously the regiment. For me, it was just one. So I was in an office with a staff NCO. That was it. So I didn't get that same kind of camaraderie that I was hoping for, and that big unit and all of the people and all the different Marines that I got to be around, I was kind of slow, which kind of sucked. So I struggled a little bit. I was lonely, right? Like I wanted to have a bunch of friends, a bunch of people, have a unit that was like a family. You know what I mean? Like that's what you kind of join for that. Like you hear about all the stories of people who are like, I met.
It'll be all right.
Yeah, we're just gonna leave it. Still love the flag though. You hear about stories about being with service members that become family. And don't get me wrong, I've had those, and I have really excellent friends that I've stuck close to up until now. But I didn't have that originally going into the fleet, so it was hard for me. I eventually got into comm company, which was kind of what I was hoping for. Camaraderie wise, platoon wise, a bigger family environment. But unfortunately, they worked 12 on, 12 off, 12 on, 12 off. They were working constantly. And I wasn't used to that. I was in an office with a staff NCO, we got off at 3. And, we got 2-hour lunches. Like, we were thriving. I was thriving as a POC. And then I got into maintenance platoon, and we worked and worked. There was no work-life balance. It was just charging constantly, and that was hard.
So for people that don't really understand maintenance management, because it's their introduction to maintenance management,
of course,
because all these different disciplines throughout the podcast, I'll be interviewing people from all the branches, right? So you want to kind of talk about how maintenance management is utilized in the Marine Corps, what the discipline does specifically, why it was kind of imperative they put you with that kind of unit inside of that company or whatever.
Okay, so that's an excellent question. So I was with maintenance platoon. So I was in a communications company. So we have, so many different platoons inside that company that all make up the radios that get sent on deployments, the radios that you handheld, like VSATs, huge ones that we communicate with from states to Afghanistan from a single item, right? So, as you know, Marines are hard on things. So they break them constantly. And also with electronics, they get broken constantly. So maintenance platoon is the one that takes care of the whole entire regiment's maintenance. The whole entire regiment's communication gear. So we maintenance it, we fix it, we everything. So me being a maintenance manager, I have to order all those things that need to be fixed. Like I'm kind of looking out for the Marine Corps' best interest when it comes to financial stuff. So it's kind of like, what kind of items do we need? So if you just leave it to the boys, they're gonna order things left and right that they don't need. So me, I'm ordering all of the equipment that needs to be replaced to make something go from a red line, which is like a not working equipment, to green line that makes it working in the most proficient way possible. Does that make sense?
Sure. So with that, your discipline also focuses on fraud, waste, abuse, right? You actually do a little bit of acquisition processing with supply chain. You want to kind of talk through that process as well?
So originally with my first, it's the same unit, but my first place I worked with the staff NCO, I was working kind of hand in hand with supply. So I was working in the supply warehouse in our own office. And so we would do things with supply, like I'm coordinating things in order. What can we get to make this a green line the cheapest way possible? So supply would be like, all right, this piece of equipment is cheaper, but it's not going to be available for 2 months. How soon do you need it? So I'm constantly navigating with other echelons. God bless you, thank you. With other echelons, trying to figure out how we can make all of our equipment green line as soon as possible, because we want to make it. We want to make.
Put in your lap at this
point. Yeah, exactly. I love it. We want to make our equipment as ready as possible. So our readiness percentage was always, we wanted to be ready for deployment no matter what.
So for folks out there that don't understand readiness,
sorry.
So fleet readiness in your unit. So there's a bunch of inspectable programs, and in maintenance, of course, it's an inspectable program. There's administrative functions that come with the maintenance. Technical requirements as well. So she was a part of the command staff originally, who would have done these type of things, because they come down and inspect these programs to ensure that they're of a certain quality and at a certain product level. And then when she went down to the platoon level, right, the company platoon level, she did that, but at the tactical level, basically. So this is it's kind of difficult to civilianize these terms. People haven't served, but your commander gets big reports from this. And so, in her position, because she's an administrative staffer, so what that means is she briefs commanders basically. She helps smooth out processes within a command. So she'll take these delinquencies on reporting, and she'll look at all these records and for these equipment, look at the technical manuals for them, and say, okay, alongside these people at the platoon level, and say, okay, how do we get you guys agreeing? What equipment do you guys require for your service hours? Which, if anybody out there who does maintenance, they know what service hours are. Right? 1,000 hours you need to do whatever for your transmission, whatever the case is. But this is for technical equipment for the Marine Corps. So
yeah, that was beautifully said. It's been it's been a few years since I've had to talk about this stuff, so it's funny to hear you talk about it and you talk about self-proficiency. Man, I haven't been in this realm in such a long time, and it's easy to talk to another Marine in a way that we both can communicate. But if anybody else from the outside was listening, they'd be like,
it's like talking to the wall.
Exactly.
So, all right. So, you're at the platoon level after being at the headquarters staff level inside of your unit. Let's talk throughout the rest of your service time. Let's talk about your experiences when you're at the platoon level, kind of the interactions and personal conflicts you went through. All because I know that we talked about this before. You had some of that in the Marine Corps. Want to hear the realistic stories of how service was, and this is what the Fire&Forgets podcast is all about. So let's get into it.
So the fleet, I'd like to say that it was cool, but I didn't. I had a big ego. I wanted to be the best female. I wanted to not in regards to be better than any other female, but I wanted to be the best female. I wanted to show the boys, which is so stupid now looking back. It's grown now, right? Ego's stupid, but looking back, I wanted to prove my worth. No, I know I don't have to, but I wanted to be the bomb. I wanted to know that those boys could rely on me no matter what. So I pushed myself in every regard, especially when it comes to physical things. I wanted to do the 10 pull-ups. I did the 10 pull-ups. I wanted to run fast. I wanted to, excel in the way that you thrive in the Marine Corps, which is, as you know, if you can run fast, you're a killer Marine. That's it. If you can lift a lot, if you can do your pull-ups, if you can have a 300 PFT CFT, you're the man. So I kind of strive for that, and now looking back, I wish I would have done more different things academic-wise. I wish I would have done more of my Marine Net classes and excelled in a knowledge-based wise, because I feel like I could have thrived if I focused on that, but I was too worried I wanted to make sure that I made it through all the hikes. I wanted to make sure that I was first one done, and I'll pick up your pack if you can. Thank you for your service. You know what I mean? I wanted to be that female, and I think that was super detrimental for me. And
so, for people that don't understand, there's a large competitive nature in the Marine Corps. We have a bunch of traits, leadership principles, traits come along with this. We have our values, we have this ethos that we believe in. And for a lot of the females, I'm not going to speak on behalf of all female Marines, but they have to compete with males, right? It's equitable competition, and some of it is fair and space, obviously, too. Yeah. But in order for her not to get kind of people be belligerent towards her and stuff like that, other females are pretty hard on females, too. So, she's out here in the fleet trying to become the best version of herself, right? So that way people will have trust and confidence in her and say, okay. And then she's using what the Marine Corps considers good leadership traits. So, hey, pick up the slack of others, educate people, all this other stuff. And she talked about it a little bit. We'll get into this as well as we go through, but the education piece. So the Marine Corps says they want people to be educated, but it's hard for people to get the time to go through their professional military education, go to continued education, go to college, go to technical schools, go to online schools, because you're doing all these different disciplines that Manny was kind of getting at. So you want to talk through the reason why you could not kind of go to college, go to continued education, PMEs, all this other stuff too.
So, like I said earlier, with my unit that I was with, we were working sometimes 7 days a week, sometimes 6 if we were lucky. And so, you really didn't get afforded a lot of the opportunities to go and do all of the extracurricular courses. And I wouldn't even necessarily call them extracurricular. The Marine Corps kind of bases its I don't know the right term, but
value system.
Thank you. Yes, bases its value system on sending Marines to go get this education. They want a well-rounded service member, right? They want somebody that's going to work for them. So it's kind of like in their best benefit to send them to these sports. Well, my unit at the time, I feel like worked us to the bones. I don't know. It was, yeah.
So what she's trying to get at. So at this time period in the Marine Corps, we're still sending out a decent amount of deployments. Mm-hmm. So all these personnel that are in this unit are probably augmenting, which means that they're transferring to other units to deploy. So that's what she's kind of alluding to.
Sorry about that. So we were getting everybody ready for deployment, so we didn't really get that time to do the extracurricular. I mean, sure, we went to Corporal Scores because they had to send us. We went to the rifle range because they had to send us. But for the extra stuff, we didn't really get that. And after working as much as we were working, I didn't want to go home and work on Marine Med classes. Like I was either working out, eating, or working at the shop. So it's like you didn't really have any extra time.
That's 99% of the Marines. Right? Yeah. For sure. 99% of Marines do that. That's so. Okay. So what was the output at your unit as far as like opportunities for you? Because I know that you never had the opportunity to deploy. Why was that the case?
So for my unit that we were non-deployable, so it wasn't even an option unless I got sent to another unit in order to deploy with them if they needed me. But because my unit only was allotted one, they weren't giving me up. Sure. So there was different opportunities, but they would pass on me because they didn't want to lose me in my unit, which was such an unfortunate thing for me because I desperately wanted to go, right? As I mean, that's kind of
absolutely.
So it was unfortunate. I was super salty about that, but it's one of those things. It is what it is. These are the cards I was dealt, so I played them. So that's kind of how it was in the unit that I was with.
Were you given any opportunity to travel? Did you augment and go inspect other units? Was it all just at the comm squadron the entire time?
So they allowed me like training opportunities to go with like Phasmo, if you will. Phasmo is like a
Respectable.
Thank you. To go and look at other units and see how their readiness is, what percentages they're working with, and how they do things fluently and efficiently in order to keep things above 80%. That's not exciting. I did get to go to California, 29 Palms. We did a training out there. That was cool.
But well, now it's like ITX.
Yeah,
ITX
it was ITX. So, and it was great. I mean, I really liked it. Just a different change of pace, but it wasn't the experience that I was hoping for. I was really hoping to go overseas. I was really hoping to do the damn thing, but I didn't get off afforded that.
Okay. So when you were at ITX, at what point was your career? A couple years in, 3 years in?
I would say, 2015. So a year and a half, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you went through your career, did your job. Sounds like you did pretty well. Basically, were what you considered yourself an above average Marine. Did you ever do meritorious stuff or any of that craziness?
So yes, I was on a couple boards. I do not interview well. Surprise, surprise. So that was a struggle for me. I did get put on some meritorious boards. I wouldn't say that I was a stellar Marine in regards of busting ass because I was over it. I mean, when the term of I dropped my pack, I dropped my pack. When we were working 12 on 12 on 12 on 12 on, I was over it. Yeah. Like you can only work so much until you're burnt out, and you're not getting the work-life balance. I realize that that's not. But now that I'm out of the Marine Corps, I realize it. So I wasn't getting the same. I wasn't getting the outside time, the friend time, anything that made me feel full. So, I mean, I did the best that I could, but I wouldn't call myself a stellar Marine. Physically, absolutely, I was top tier, But I mean, looking back, I could have been better. I was a platoon sergeant for a little while. Could have been better. I look at the leadership traits that I had and the leadership traits that I've now accrued. I feel like I could have done such a better job, but hindsight 2020, right?
So this is one thing as well that leads people to transition is that kind of mental anguish. She had this big ego, and then she grew into her leadership roles in the Marine Corps, it's feeling like you can't accomplish enough now. And when you don't have the opportunities to, one, rest and refit, right, kind of get away from that minute garrison Marine Corps stuff, especially during this time period, there were still combat operations going on, right? So, she's sitting at home, she gets off work. She's like, well, I got to take care of my personal self a little bit, which is just really her taking care of her professional life, which is continue to go to the gym, continue to eat properly, continue to get rest so she can go back to work, do another, 9 to 5, plus, day. And then she never really had an opportunity, sounds like, to actually get out there and do Marine shit, if you will, like non-garrison operations, which is brutal during this time period because all your peers, all your friends, everybody at this point in the Marine Corps is still going out, whether it's special mag tasks or they're doing attached to the muse or getting individual augments, going to the joint command, whatever the case is. So, yeah, I can imagine how tough it was because I had a not so similar experience.
Absolutely. So, and that's the thing too that's killer is you're seeing your friends leave, and you kind of get a little bit of status when you deploy, as like you get, you've done some things. People respect you a little bit more on the things you've done and how you thrive and how you ride up through the Marine Corps. So it was, I stayed stateside, and in the Marine Corps, that's not really what you join the Marine Corps for. Stay stateside. Oh. So that was a little bit of a difficult thing for me. It also added, a little bit, like he said, a little bit of that anguish. You have this drive to thrive and do what you came here to do, and not getting that opportunity sucks. So, I did the best I could with what I had at the time.
So, how was your leadership in the unit? Like, how did they treat the Marines? How did what was kind of their main philosophy? What was the goals for them, and how did it influence your decisions to progress to the Marine Corps, and ultimately you transitioned out of the Marine Corps? What was it? Was it the command's influence? What led you to be civilian after that?
Oh boy, but I knew throughout my whole entire enlistment, this is it. I'm not doing it again. But then I had an opportunity after I talked to the career planner. I had an opportunity if I re-enlisted that I could go to Hawaii. So that kind of sparked something in me. We go to Hawaii earlier that year. I had vacationed in Hawaii with my boyfriend at the time and his family, who were also Marines. So it was like this big thing. And we stayed on the Marine Corps base. It was incredible. And I was like, if I could live here, it's like the beauty of the ocean with the beauty of the mountains. So it's like home, right? So in North Carolina, it's the first time I got to really be around the ocean. And then in Utah, we have big mountains. So it's like bringing that both of those things together. It was incredible. So that was the only drive that I had in order to stay in the Marine Corps. But my boyfriend at the time, John, he had no desire. He wanted to move back to Florida. So I made a decision, and I chose my relationship at the time. But that was my only sliver of possibility to ever stay in the Marine Corps. And that was it. That was done.
So that's pretty typical, by the way, everybody. I mean, a lot of people follow relationships. Marines are notorious for getting married and getting out because of influences from their significant others, and I got respect for it, but it does lead you to sometimes missed opportunities, deployments, training, all that other stuff. And that's one thing that is probably the most upsetting about the Marine Corps is the talent management portion of this. It's like you do your whole career, and they finally give you an opportunity at the very end. Say, okay, well, we'll give you a little bit back.
Throw you a bone.
We'll throw you that bone. And then, you've already got things going for you the other direction. So now, Amy makes the decision. She's like, hey, I'm just going to follow my love at the time. And I'm going to go ahead and push outwards and go to Florida and start my next chapter in her life. All right. So you and John decide to move to Florida.
Right.
All right.
So I'll say from the rip, I don't regret it one bit. Like, I never regret leaving the Marine Corps because I came to Florida. The relationship that I had with John for 7 years was incredible. We had a great relationship. Although we chose different paths, like I think that path led me here to Florida, and Florida is where I thrive. Like, this place, I can say without a shadow of a doubt, is meant for me.
Okay. So you and John moved down here. what was your thought process for your career path? Did you have anything planned out when you were transitioning? What occupations did you have? Intermittently and throughout this period. We're going to just go through
Yeah,
because this is what the podcast is trying to highlight. It's kind of the transition process is a big portion of this. We're just going to get into it. So go ahead and start from day one.
Start from day one. All right. So I'm kind of a rogue chick. I'm not gonna lie. The career choices that I choose are obviously a little male dominating. Don't ask me why. I don't know. Maybe it's because I like to do hard things and that's where I thrive. I don't know. But originally I got out and, well, excuse me. So right before I was trying to get out, they had a program where you could go and do welding or as a Marine. Like you get taken from your unit and they put you in a welding program and it gets you set up to go work out in the real world. It's working for the union. So it's a program that the union has put on with the Marine Corps, which I thought was perfect. And honestly, I was trying to do anything. So I was like, welding, that's my ticket. So I kind of, now looking back from a different standpoint where I'm at now, I realized that the welding was just an alleyway for me to get away from my command. It wasn't necessarily a passion of mine.
It was a niche.
It was a niche, yeah. It was a niche for me to get away from my command. So I kind of carried that though. So I got out of the Marine Corps and I was like, I'm gonna go to welding school. Welding school didn't start until, I don't know, 5 months after I got out.
Sure.
So during that time, I was like, I'm gonna utilize my GI Bill. I'm gonna go to taxidermist in Montana. Because me and my boyfriend John at the time, we were into hunting, and it was John exposed me to a lot of incredible things that I would never have been exposed to originally, or without him, with a different partner, if you will. So I kind of reveled in the lifestyle that he provided. You know, fishing, hunting, doing all these different things that I'd never done before. And so I was like, oh, what a cool thing for me to get a job doing something artistic, right, craft-wise, that can also incorporate my relationship and the people and the friends that he has. I can do, I can mount animals for them. Like I just thought it was a perfect solution. Do that on the side, and I can do welding, and just I'm thinking of all the possibilities because the GI Bill affords you almost unlimited possibilities if you look at it that way.
Yeah, if you apply correctly.
Exactly. So I was like, I'm gonna do them both. And then I'm still gonna have GI Bill left over. So if I want to do something else, I can. So I got out of the Marine Corps, went to Montana straight to taxidermy school. Did taxidermy school for 2.5 months. Moved to Florida. Me and John got a house together. Incredible. Lived in large. And then I started welding school. And much like my military career, I butt heads with people of dominating personalities because I too have a dominant, which I've gotten better with over time. But my instructor from welding, me and him butt heads hard. So I was like, I'm done with this. I also realized I don't like welding all that much. It was just an alleyway for me to get away from my command, but I'm away from my command and I'm thriving now. So it's like, all right, welding's not for me. So my boyfriend's dad, which was John, Russ, he was a part of the sheriff's office, and so was his uncle, and they were both Marines. So it's kind of this brotherly family love that I had with them, and we all had this in common.
Sure.
And they were cops, they were deputies with the sheriff's office. Like a good retirement. Like I'm thinking ahead. Like if I want to have kids, I want to have them have healthcare. John was a charter captain, so he didn't have to provide any of those benefits. So I wanted to be able to provide those benefits and do something cool, right? Like being a cop. Like I never thought about it. Like let's do this. So I done with welding, and I went to the police academy with my GI Bill, and I did really well in the police academy. I was also the main leader of my recruit class, and I did really well. I thrived in that. Became a deputy. I was a deputy for 3 years.
How was the academy time? Like, what did you guys do? What's the Floridian sheriffs and police training look like? Because every state's different. Obviously,
right.
Everyone has their own laws. Florida, love Florida. It's the Wild Wild West, obviously. So if you want to talk about some of that experience through your training.
Absolutely. So the training I thought was cool. I mean, they tried to put a little bit of a military twist on it, which was cute because coming from the Marine Corps, I'm like, okay. But they were rough on us and make us run and do all this ridiculous stuff. But it was just about 6 months long. We're doing scenarios. We're running different, obviously learning the laws, figuring what we need to do, and they're putting us in scenarios that we would be put in on the road and seeing what we do. And honestly, I feel like the reason why I decided to be a cop, and now looking back from where I'm at now, because I'm no longer, is it put me in a super readiness mindset. So I constantly am running scenarios in my head now because of this training that I had. Like, what would I do if this happened? What would I do if this happened? If I run up on a car accident, what do I gotta do? You know what I mean? So the academy kind of set you up for success as being a cop, but it also set me up for success in my life moving forward.
Yeah. So one thing that people who don't know you is you're extremely happy ties, extreme happy ties into your community, right? And her not even being from Florida, I mean, she comes here, does taxidermy. It's a local business, right? She then transitions into another community, very heavy community output occupation, which is being a deputy sheriff. Goes to school for it, right? Now becomes a deputy sheriff, and then through her time, she goes ahead and starts prepping for her next chapters, which we're going to talk about.
So we, after the academy, like I said, it was great. We had a good time. I was a cop for 3 years. I was exposed to a lot of different situations that has changed and formed me into a better better person that I can be for other people, a better advocate that I can be, because I understand situations and I have more compassion and grace for things that happen. And I don't know, I think being a cop was a super beneficial thing for me, although much like being a worker, I didn't love it at the time. But it formed me into the person that I am now. And without that, I don't think that I would be nearly as of the person that I am now, which I feel like I've done really well to be where I'm at now, and I feel happy and grateful for where I'm at.
So it's hard to put words to paper on like kind of all these experiences, but what she's basically alluding to is like it developed these different capabilities, right? These different values, and then it exposes you to, well, the domestic side of paramilitary, which is deputy sheriffs and a bunch of federal law enforcement. And we talked about this a little bit too, about kind of the exposure to the community, and you get to see people in a different light, right? And it makes you gain respect, but it also gives you perception, from my understanding. Right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what kind of sucks about being a cop, because you go in, I'm sure much like in the Marine Corps, in any job, you have this like rah, I'm gonna do all these wonderful things. Like as a cop, like, I'm gonna help people, I'm gonna do all these great, excellent things. But then you get exposed to it, and you're like, man, I'm dealing with the bottom 10% most of the time, and it's hard to. I mean, maybe 1 out of 50 people that you can actually impact and touch their heart, right, and make a positive change in their life, because a lot of people are just on their path, wreaking havoc, and they continue to do that. So it kind of gives you, depending on which way you look at it, and I look at it differently 3 years ago than I do now, but it gave me. It made me irritated, like with all of the different nonsense. But now looking back, like I have a lot more compassion for people, because the reason why they're in that situation is because they've been through some shit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that one thing that the Marine Corps harps on is empathy, right, and being able to sympathize with people, which is part of our mentor program and stuff like that. Marines don't do a very good job at it. Let's put it that way. Like you say it up front. And then you transition into these community output type occupations, a couple of them, that she had zero planning for, by the way, which is pretty typical of Marine.
Yep.
And she gets to see like the real side. And Florida's a wild place. I'm not saying it's lawless, but there's laws. But people, there's just like a wild walk of life here, right? There's all these different industries, local output community stuff that is not influenced at all by the rest of society. So she's seeing like all these different facets of people while she's being a deputy. So what led you to make the decision to stop being a deputy?
Ooh, so that's a loaded question. So there's kind of a couple parts to that. I started having back issues pretty significantly in 2020. Struggling a lot, went and got an MRI, figured things out. Like I have a bunch of issues, 405/5S1, I have sciatic pain, I'm struggling, and I've never had problems like this before. Like, I mean, I've had back injuries, if you will, in the Marine Corps, things like that, but nothing that was sustained this long. So that was one of my big factors. Also, in 2020, my sister, she was in her domestic violence situation with an officer involved shooting. So that was another huge impact that like everything's kind of hitting me at once. So between those two like big life events that happened, I started thinking about what makes me happy and what doesn't. And like this job, I was working nights. I was opposite schedule from my boyfriend at the time, John, and like I missed him, and I missed like my sister. Obviously, I missed that like what my body could do before my back injury. So I had surgery in June of 2020.
So did you have, that's from the Marine Corps, right?
Yeah,
back
that's
injuries
right.
from the Marine Corps. So do you want to, before we get into surgery, do you want to talk about your VA process?
Yeah.
And we'll also kind of want to get into like your support networks, right? Because I feel like a lot of people have a hard time with transition in civilian life, mental health and stuff like that because of support networks. So let's start with the VA and then we'll move on to some other aspects.
So originally I didn't do very good with the VA, trying to figure out and navigate going through the process because it's just paper. With the time I had health insurance through the sheriff's office. So
they're trying to convince you not to file things too.
Yeah, of course. So it's like, and you also don't want to be a punk, right? So they tell you like, oh, you don't need that, you don't rate that, that's for combat veterans, that's for this. So again, like, all right, like I don't need them, right? The ego's loud and proud, saying I don't need the VA. I don't, I have my own job with my own health insurance. I'll take care of my shit on my own. So I did that. So my first surgery, I had back surgery, went through my home insurance, my sheriff's office insurance, and I healed from that. And then I started realizing like I can't go back to work with this back injury. Like I went 3 months, went back to work, fractured my spine because at that time my back was still unstable. So I picked this lady up in a emergency situation, didn't think anything about it. Was in the moment, picked her up, fractured my spine, re-herniated all my discs. So that's when I was like, all right, I need to go through the VA because this is obviously not just something that I can go through on my own because this is started in the Marine Corps.
So in the Marine Corps, did they have it documented, like your injuries?
Right.
So
this is loaded, yeah.
Yeah, this is fun. Well, the problem with it is you moved on.
Yeah.
You're not a part of that life anymore, right? You are Mandy Thurber down in Florida, deputy sheriff, independent, doing your own thing, got your own insurance. Been away from service for a hot minute now.
Right.
So it's kind of weird to say, oh, I got to go back to the DOD and I need to get treatment because of injuries that were sustained from that.
Right.
And I got plenty of friends. I mean, my buddy, I'm not going to mention his name. You're going to watch this, by the way. His freaking family worked for the VA in his state, and he didn't put claims in. And his thought process is like, oh, well, he knows it's service. He ended up doing it.
Yeah,
he knows it's service related, and he's like, oh, whatever, I'll deal with it later. Or, oh, like I don't want to be a bitch.
Yeah,
I don't want to, or I want to get another federal job in the future, and I don't want him to look at my record.
Right.
If you want to work for that 3-letter agencies, or you want to go work for a State Department job, or you want to go work for a state level entity, law enforcement, whatever the case is, you kind of now the society's getting better about it, but originally because of all these post-Gulf War, global war on terrorism time frame, a lot of occupations don't hire veterans with significant injuries unless you can do administrative work, right? Because they don't want somebody who's a liability, right? There are some federal branch jobs, specifically like Border Patrol, where you need to have capabilities, right? But this is one thing, I'm sure Mandy thought, too, I'm not going to say anything, I'm not going to go back to the DOD, because eventually I might want to get a federal job. I might want to get a state job. I don't want people to know about these injuries. They end up hurting you in the long run, so let's get back to it, sorry.
No, you're good. That's a good explanation. That's kind of my thing. I also, my big thing was I don't want to be a bitch. I don't need them. Like, I can take care of my own. And then I started to realize, like, I can't even do my job as a cop without being hurt. And that's it hit my ego hard. Like, it's like, but I've always been able to do this. Like, I'm never going to tell somebody I'm not going to pick them up in an emergency situation. That's never going to happen. So it's like, then it started making my mind roll, like, what if I can't continue to do this job? How am I going to make money? How am I going to do this if I can't do physical jobs, then I'm gonna have to work at a desk. I have to do something better. So I was like, I need to plan for my future. Right? I need to take care of me because I don't know. So I went through the process with the VA after my first surgery. So they gave me, a 0% on my back after my surgery. So I had, yes, I had it, but they at least gave me, they gave me a service connected option. So, which is huge. That's important. So that was nice moving forward. So I could obviously eventually down the road after I had another back injury, like I talked about when I picked that lady up, fractured my spine, re-herniated all my discs. I now needed a fusion because I was no longer a candidate for disc replacement because they'd taken too much of my bone out in my spine, which also led to me fracturing my spine.
Of course.
That force. So, long story longer. I had a spinal fusion. I have a 6-inch incision in the front. I have 3 incisions in the back, 3 inches apiece. I'm a walking scar. It's like a battle wound. And I started trying to up that percentage. Well, for back injuries, no. Like it's all about limitation. If I can
mobility.
Thank you, mobility. If I can bend over, I'm fine. But it also doesn't take into account all the limitations that I have moving forward. Like being a cop, you have to be able to jump fences. You have to be able to take grown-ass men down. I'm small, like 125 pounds. So it's like I have to look at moving forward what's best for my future, what's best for me physically. Like I eventually, want to have a family. I want to be a mom. Am I going to be able to do that with all of these back injuries, pick my kids up when I'm 30, right? So I started moving forward with the VA process. Although it's difficult, still working through that process. I feel like it's beneficial to have those kind of decisions. It's beneficial to have those kind of things to fall back on, because originally that started in the Marine Corps. I think a lot of service members need to be aware of that. Go to medical when you have an issue, because it's important that you get those things taken care of and that the military fixes the things that they break.
I absolutely agree. I'm just found out recently that there's some inconsistencies in my medical record that probably won't get fixed before I end up getting out as well. Okay, so there was a significant family dynamic change with your sister's death.
Right.
You had very, very severe back injuries that had to be addressed and stuff like that. Also, you weren't very happy with the job anymore because of exposure. A lot of exposure going on.
Right.
It's okay. So, what was next?
So I was kind of in a rough spot too with my partner, right? So going through a traumatic event, it's hard for people to understand that when they've never been through or lost anyone. So it was hard for me. I didn't really know how to process it. Obviously, I went back to my Marine Corps ways of drinking, right? That's how we...
Self-isolation.
Yep, self-isolation, self-medication, right? So I started drinking a lot, which obviously didn't do me any favors. It wasn't beneficial for me. It wasn't beneficial for our relationship. But John, he was a great guy. He hung tight. He did the best he could at the time. But I needed more than he could give me. I needed to make a significant life change. I was unhappy in my job, unhappy in my relationship, unhappy with my family dynamic, losing my sister. So it kind of put me into a little downward spiral. During, go ahead.
What, so this is something that I spoke about on the podcast before. What, who was there for you? Was anybody there for you? Because this is the thing that I always talk about with veterans is they isolate themselves from their family, or their family, they're escaping their family,
right.
Which is a lot of times true. I don't think that's the case for you, but and they isolate themselves from the Marines they served with and their friends back home, which probably don't share the same values once you serve.
Right.
Not that it changes people, but it kind of changes people.
Right.
You lose some of those, small town values and stuff like that. So, who was there? Did you have? You don't have to specifically name names or anything like that, but were there support networks there for you?
I would say yes, family obviously, but also with family, you're both going through the same thing, and you both kind of don't know how to process it, so it doesn't really do you any favors besides just embracing the suck together, right? And I guess that's kind of what the Marine Corps and basically what life is, embracing the suck when it sucks. So that's kind of what I did. I wouldn't say that I had anybody who fully like mentored me in how to heal. I kind of navigated those things on my own. And I feel like that's kind of where everything changed for me. Right? Tried to change my life and my mentality to find forgiveness, to find grace, to find, a better way to live my life because I was so unhappy.
Were you unhappy because of the severity of your injuries or because of your experiences in the Marine Corps? Or was it kind of just like a blend of everything?
I think, in my opinion, it was a blend of everything because I was unhappy with my body. The fact that I couldn't do the things that I have always wanted to do. Right? I can't go run. I can't lift weights. I just back in 2019, me and John we bought a home, and I wanted my dreams to start a farm. Right? Because I had chickens, and I was like, I'm doing this. The chickens are the bomb. I love them. I think they're great. So we bought this home, and it wasn't fenced. It was on 2 acres, and I wanted to do all these things and get these animals, but I couldn't do any of the things I wanted to do. Put up a fence and carry feed bags. My back was so bad. I was depressed because my sister had just died, and suddenly, and me and her were very close. So it was like it wasn't. She was the.
You lost a part of you.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, in more ways than one. So, with that being said, it was a culmination of everything. My relationship wasn't doing very well because obviously, how do you be there for somebody who's just kind of a mess, right? When you've never. John is as wonderful as a man he is. He's lived a very, I wouldn't say easy life because that's unkind in that regard, but he's lived a great life. His parents have stayed together his whole life. He's lived in the same house. He has the same friends. He has the same, support and structure. Like, not everybody grows up that way. Yeah. So he didn't understand the anguish that I felt, the loss that I felt. So it was hard for him to be a support for me at the time. And I think with that, my relationship failing, my family dynamic struggling, my job wasn't providing for me, my body wasn't providing for me. It was just like, I need to make a change. Whatever I got to do, I need to do it because this is not serving me at all.
Okay. So what was like the next output for you? So after this is all said and done, how did you improve mental health aspects?
Mm-hmm.
You started getting treatment, all this other stuff. What led you? What was like next? I want to know what was like next. How did you?
How did I get to there?
Yeah. How did you get to Microfarm?
So
Thurber Farms. I know there's some other stuff.
Yeah.
I know it. They need to know it.
Right.
So let's tell them.
So I first started with quitting my job. I was in a desk job at the time because I was healing from my 3rd back surgery. So I had, my fusion. It went in through the front and through the back. Yeah, 3 freaking back surgeries. Killer. And I was like, you know what? The job isn't going to work. I'm not going to be a desk deputy. It's not in the cards. I won't thrive there. I won't be happy there. So I quit my job, and that was exhilarating. Like, I was like, I didn't have any crazy things on what I was going to do. Like, I started nannying, which was fun because I loved it. It's huge back home in Utah. My sister has 4 kids. My cousins have a magnitude of kids, So I miss being around kids, and I needed that kind of joy. So I found it with kids. So I quit my job, started nannying. And, it made enough money for me to get by. I wasn't killing it, but I was happier, so much happier. And shortly right after that, I broke up with my boyfriend. I was in my relationship. And I think John having to have went through all of those things with me, it kind of turned him cold towards me, which looking back, I feel sad about because he was an excellent part of my life. He really was. He was beneficial for me in so many ways, and I'm super grateful for him. But it turned our relationship sour, and there wasn't anything that we could do because I was growing in such a different direction than John.
Yeah.
So I ended that relationship, and that was another thing that literally elevated me to a whole nother spectrum of what life could be. The possibilities were open because I could be whoever I wanted to be, and not who I think that he would want me to be, or who I should be for his family, or who I should be for his friends, or what have you. Like, I was like,
Becoming the purest version of yourself.
Exactly. And I had no one to tell me no one to judge the things that I was doing. I started reading a lot of books. And if I could give any advice to anybody, read books. Like, grow your heart, grow your mind, because it has elevated me to a whole nother life that I would not have had I not done with my job that made me unhappy, with my relationship that made me unhappy, and gave all the love that I was trying to give the other things to myself. So my back was getting better, right? My mind and heart were getting better because I'm given all the love that I was giving to others. I gave it to myself. Started reading, and boy, have I read so many books in the past year and a half, 2 years, that have changed my heart and mind and focused me on things that make me happy. The farm, my body's getting better. I'm having these animals. I'm growing with these animals, right? I'm raising them. I'm taking care of them. I'm watching them have babies. I'm watching like how the dynamic of that changes and the beauty that comes from animals. Like, if anything, the farm was therapy for me more than anything else. And watching them, like my chickens, I let my chickens raise their own babies, which is very rare in a flock environment. Which, I mean, to anybody else that seems silly, right? It's chickens, no, it's incredible. It's incredible to watch. It's incredible to be a part of, and it's incredible to be able to facilitate. So, I know it's a long-winded answer to a short question, but I went from all of the bad things, and I kind of just evolved into something else. I started being a nanny, which led me to another family, which led me to another family. Now I work for a family. I nanny for them when they come into town, but currently they've moved, but they have their home here still. So I Airbnb their home on the property.
Yeah, you run their estate.
Exactly. So here in Florida. So they have their incredible family that has incredible businesses. So they have a bunch of different obligations in other states. And so I take all care of all their stuff here in the state.
So this is something I want to talk about too. So I talk about community because I'm huge in the community. I think that everybody should be part of their community, should have those community outputs, stuff like that. Not even from Florida. I can help and assist other larger businesses, babysitting children. I just got a micro farm and stuff like that. But community is huge, and it is for her as well, being from an upbringing where she has family ties that have communal ties, right? Transition out. But now she's talking about like finding her therapeutic output, and I feel like a lot of people do it different ways, comedy or through work, through actual exercising therapy with your psychologist, or some or they get on drugs, which is like your opioids. Some people go on downers to help out their mental stability and stuff like that. But it's finding that avenue to that. This is something I was trying to talk about before in my last podcast. It's like finding that healing process, finding your happiness is hard because you got to find out how not to be a part of this from service, or how you're a part of the organization.
Yes, oh, absolutely.
You have to find individuality, right? And then with the individuality, you have to figure out how not to feed that ego, feed that old version of yourself, but hold some of the values still.
Absolutely.
Because those values that are installed in you are inherent to your success, right? And she's kind of alluding to them. If you're, service member, you understand, you're seeing it, but the transition between life and service, right, to civilian servitude, right, which is a lot of people miss and aren't as happy because they're not getting the morality and camaraderie from their veterans because they're self-isolating. They're on their own program. So, okay, so you got this phenomenal family you're working with, and let's talk about Thurber freaking Farms.
So the farm is my pride and joy. I love it. I've got 3 cows. I've got a horse. I've got 2 goats. I've got 2 cats, 2 dogs, over 100 chickens, 2 geese. Currently, I'm incubating geese eggs, so I'll have little gooselings running around. And I'm enthralled with it. It is everything that makes me happy. And I think a lot that really makes me thrive is not only the animals, but it's the work that comes along. So putting up fences and carrying feed bags and figuring out the best way that I can make different environments so that these animals can thrive. It works my body. It works my mind. It makes me exhausted. But I think that's kind of like all the different career paths that I've chosen. Being in the Marine Corps, like I thrive in hard things. It's one of the things that makes me better and makes me want more. Is conquering hard things. And on the farm, you're doing that every day. You're figuring out how to run plumbing to this one so you can have a float line for your big water trough so you don't have to constantly fill it up. Like, you're just thinking things and navigating things. And this was just a piece of property, and now it has electricity, it has power, it has water, it has ran to everything. Like my chicken coop is huge. Like I'm growing it at a rate that keeps me, my heart and mind, and my physical body so happy.
So, sorry. These flags in here. We had a change of scenery for this podcast of the flags. We had some different backdrops, so we wanted to move. This is the area that I will be. So
moving forward.
Yeah, moving forward, we're gonna work on some Velcro or something like that. So, okay. So what things do you do for your local community? So obviously you produce eggs.
Right.
What other products and stuff like that do you do with your farm?
So the eggs are a big one, and especially right now because the egg business is booming. So I have a lot of chickens. That's my big main source, and that honestly, it's not really killer for making money. It's just paying for feed because the benefit that I get from the farm is far superior to anything monetary.
Yeah.
So I did have a milk cow. I just recently dried her off, so I was getting raw milk that I was selling and doing things like that. Obviously, it was that's a grueling process, a lot of fun. Morning and night milkings, and it was a lot of fun. I look forward to rebreeding her in the future so I can get milk again. But again, you have a lot. It's a hard market to have raw milk because people hear all these horrible things about it, but do your research and find out that
pretty good for you.
But right now, it's mostly the eggs and the enjoyment of the farm. I mean, people come all the time to my farm just so they can pet my animals.
Yeah.
Because they're pretty freaking puppies. They're large. My cows are like lawn puppies. They're the sweetest things. You can cuddle on them and lay on them. My goats, they'll follow you around like dogs. Like, it's a magical place.
How many of your animals were rescues? How many of them did you pick up situations? I know that you're not utilizing the profit off of, so I want people to understand the micro farm that she runs. Some of it is for monetary gain,
mm-hmm.
right? But that's also, she's given a good product for a very cheap price to help her community out,
mm-hmm.
right? She recently got interviewed for the news as well,
mm-hmm.
talking through this egg crisis because industry and commerce, you'll get diseases that come through with agriculture and your ecology and stuff like that with livestock. So that's what I want people to understand. Like, you're not really doing this. This is like, honestly, you could register as nonprofit.
Yeah,
whatever.
Of course, yeah.
But people, I want people to understand like what the Thurber Farms kind of is to you.
To me, it's a freaking sanctuary. It is like even if it's not for anybody else, it's for myself. Like, it is everything that makes me happy. You could not get me away from the farm if it was less. It has more benefits than one in every regard. So you talked about rescues, right? So the sheriff's office will hit me up all the time because they're like, "Hey Thurber, we got this chicken that someone threw outside the window or whatever. We come get it. Hey, someone stole this animal, but we can't find the owners. Can you hold it? You know what I mean?" So I will take almost anything.
Absolutely.
Less than an elephant because those are expensive to feed, but any of the animals that I have, I mean, I bought my dairy cow. She's an injured, but I got her from the fair from the 4-H kids, so I supported that project because I think that 4-H is an incredible program. Teaches kids a lot of great things, and again, you can't go wrong with kids and animals. That's my bread and butter. That's what I love. So being able to support that, I also bought my dairy goats from a lady down the street. She's the 4-H director for the kids for dairy goats. So also helping that program out. I think
community.
Yeah, it's a community thing you keep saying, but it's hard to. You don't realize it until someone like you tells you, like, "Man, you really do the community outreach, and you helping and benefiting all these different areas." But it's just being.
So, I wanted to create this to show the 7% of the population of the United States are veterans. Of that active duty 1% or whatever the case is, or 3%, and then you have all these 7% of the population veterans. The more successful ones, the happier veterans, people that transition well, because it looks like had some ups and downs, significant ups and downs.
But we're on the up climb.
Yeah, run up on. But there's some back end stuff she's discussing right now because of the front end situation that led her to make all these crazy decisions, you know, from taxidermy school to welding school to deputy sheriff's office to nanny,
Yep.
state manager, micro farms, rescue programs, and all for what? For the benefit of the community and because of enjoyment, finding the appropriate things in her life that fit her the best. And most Marines are in Army, Air Force, everybody kind of wants to just get out, escape it, but without planning makes it difficult. To say the least, difficult, but it also can lead to a lot of struggles. And I think Mandy highlighted a bunch of the struggles, and which is finding your own personality, your own drive, what fits for you, what's therapeutic for you to help you out from your injuries and stresses from before service, during service, after service. Finding your network of friends, whether that's provided from your occupations or from your community and stuff like that. So pretty awesome, story, and that's the reason why I'm so freaking excited, because it's just fun, to hear about all the different avenues you took in your life. You know what I mean? Okay, so let's get back to it. Sorry.
No, that was awesome. It's complimentary. I appreciate that. It's been a crazy road, right? Like I realized from the outside looking in, I've done a lot of road things, and people
sporadic,
and you know what? But what's crazy, and if I could give anybody advice, it would be to take the leap. Like bet on yourself, because it comes through. Like it really does. If you have, enough self-confidence and you have enough self-love that you can kind of go out on a leap and be who you want to be. Like I wasn't raised on a farm. I learned how to do this stuff less than 3 years ago, and I have a full farm and they thrive. I take such good care of them, right? And I learned that because I read books. I decided this is something I want to do, and I did it. Like, bet on yourself, because it's worth it. Like, you can live the life you want to live, and I think I'm a pure example of that. I came from, some ups and downs like we talked about, but it's led me to the most beautiful place that I'm at now.
Yeah. So, what is next for Thurber Farms? What's next for you? So, at the end of this, I'm obviously going to put her links and stuff like that in social media, all that good stuff. So let's get into it.
So I mean, right now I'm just kind of thriving in the environment that I have now. I got a horse. She's her name's Serenity, but she's not. She's a difficult horse. This is the first horse I've ever gotten. So I'm kind of focusing on just training her and doing the things that literally set my soul on fire, which is being with these animals, training these animals, figuring out how that they can live their best life, which in turn makes me live mine. So I'm just kind of sitting at this spot right now and enjoying it, because another thing I've learned is life's a trip and it can change in a second. If you're in the present moment and you're loving it, stay there. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. So we're going to close out here in a minute, but I kind of wanted to talk about some of the difficulties and how Mandy and every other veteran that's out there have to do this exact same thing, is figuring it out, basically. So no one's there for you after you transition unless you create this community outputs networks, or if you still have value within your family dynamics growing up, your friends growing up, or the members that you serve with, or people that you throughout your career met. But it doesn't have to end there. You can always continue to develop those networks and community and stuff like that. And that's what Mandy's going to be doing probably for the rest of her life at this point. And she'll probably end up snatching some more land somewhere eventually, and maybe running some more estates and doing some more nanny or whatever but it doesn't have to just end there. She can literally accomplish whatever she wants. And she's a prime example of, like, even though she's rogue, as she's described, if you apply those principles that you're taught and you have good community tie-ins, you can basically be successful. So, all right, getting back to it. Do you have any advice for the veterans that are transitioning out there?
Absolutely. So I would say utilize the resources. I mean, when you go through your, I don't know what they call it now, but your getting out classes, take that to heart. Like, write down people's emails, write down the phone numbers. They give you a booklet and they tell you to use your resources, and you probably know use those resources. they're incredible. Like going through VA disability. Like that's, if you have injuries, you need to submit a claim for that. If you, so one thing that I wish that I would have done is you have life insurance with the military, and they give it to you up to a year after you get out, and you can sustain that if you pay into it during that year. Well, I didn't know that. I would love to have life insurance that I'm still paying into that I could have had through the Marine Corps, but if you fall outside that window, that's no longer an option for you. So just little things like that. Read the booklet that they give you. I read it a couple years after I got out, which didn't do me any favors. So resources. Reach out to people that have gotten out before, that have done different things, and see if there's a different avenue that you didn't even know was a possibility. Getting your VA healthcare. Always, sign up for that. You're entitled to that. It's important. So if there's a time in your life where you don't have insurance through a job, you always have something to fall back on with the VA, but you have to be in on that program. You have to apply for it. So again, use your GI Bill. Oh my gosh, use your GI Bill. If you're not sure what you want to do anything, everything. Like, although that might be rogue in some regards, it has led me to a beautiful place. Do anything that you're passionate about, even if it's not a 4-year degree. Do a bunch of technical schools. Like, you have options, and utilize your options. That would be my biggest advice.
Yeah, so we're atypical members of society. So, people can get out and go to college and get a degree, undergraduate, master's, PhD, be successful. By all means, people create their own businesses. Mandy has created a small business for herself. She works with the community and stuff like that. But I 100% agree, is following your passions is going to lead you to be happier and a better member of society. So, it's awesome to see a veteran get out. I mean, who would have thought that you would be doing monocrop agriculture and random things? You know what I mean? It's pretty wild. Okay, so let's get into local community and stuff like that. For people who want to reach out to you, do you allow volunteering?
Sure, absolutely.
Do you allow people to donate feed, stuff like that? So when I drop our socials in the bios, URLs, stuff like that, YouTube links, stuff like that, it'll be on Instagram. I'll create little reels and also stuff at the end of this thumbnail. I don't know, whatever. So Thurber Farms on Instagram, right? Stuff like that. Okay. So one last question for you, and then I'll close out, and then you and I can go get some breakfast finally.
Yeah.
We've been for a while. So what is your output for Thurber Farms? Like, what is the actual output? And in the future, is it just to sustain it? Do you want to develop it more? What's next for you?
So, I mean, if we're looking at a future, I wouldn't say goal, but future, we don't know what state we're going to be going in soon with government, with whatever. It's self-sustaining, right? So I live on a small farm. I have chickens, goats, cows. I have, I live with a well. I have well water. So it's like I have all these things to self-sustain. It's a beautiful and wonderful thing that I can share with others, but if there's ever a time where things, like I said, I'm always ready, right? I'm always constantly planning scenarios. If things don't go right, I'm still all right. So that's kind of, I wouldn't say that I'm planning for anything rogue in the future, because I kind of limited out on the animals right now on my small acres. But I would say that sustaining it and keeping it as wonderful and beautiful as it is moving forward, that's my goal. That's the end of that.
Okay. All right. Well, we're about to close out here. I appreciate you, Mandy, for coming on the podcast.
Absolutely.
You're an excellent guest. Episode number 3, everybody. Fire and Forget podcast. Shout out to my sponsor, my buddy Jarrett. It is Accent Fencing. He's out in Georgia, East Coast. Check him out. I forget if he has media. I'll ask him after this, but I appreciate you coming on the podcast. Excellent interview. Like I said, she stands exactly for the Fire and Forget podcast. She talks exactly through what I was kind of hinting for when I created this thing, which is like, if you have ties in the community, you're going to be more successful. Utilize those resources, you're going to be more successful. If you apply those fundamentals and characteristics, and don't ignore how valuable those leadership traits, principles that you learn, whatever branch you're in, all the education you receive, all the advice and mentorship, apply it. Because I think that if you don't, you're going to be unsuccessful. Right, and she's a prime example. When she started really applying it, she found her passions in life. She found her ties into the community and stuff like that. And then like they're not typical lines. She didn't plan any of that. You know what I mean? So like for you those who haven't planned your stuff out, look at this kind of look at her story, her lineage, right, as it is now, and say, okay, well maybe I don't have a plan right now in place, right, for the future, but you know I can look at all these other veterans, look at them around your region and stuff like that. What she talked about right here, she had no ties to the place she moved, right, other than her partner in the past, and she ended up making the best out of it because she made relationships and she developed those characteristics probably from her time in service and her uprising and stuff like that in her youth. So, you know, excellent, excellent story. I appreciate you coming on again. Her socials, like I said, Thurber Farms on Instagram. We'll post the links on YouTube. I'm thinking about moving over to Rumble, so you guys eventually will see the videos on Rumble because it's a free speech platform, from my understanding. Not advertising for them or anything like that. Eventually, I probably will move over. All right. Thanks for tuning in to the Fire and Forget podcast. See you guys next episode.